For those of you who don't know, my name's Chris Vigil. I'm living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm a member here. Um, uh, I've really enjoyed these talks. I've gone to as many as I could. I had to miss a few, but yeah, I've really enjoyed them, and I'm glad to be participating in this. And when I was preparing for this talk, it's sort of interesting. Kind of two things came to me. One is that it's kind of a work of fiction, and it would. I think this talk would have been different 2 years ago, and I think it would be different 2 years into the future. So, um, I'll try to be as honest and forthcoming as I can. But it was kind of interesting going back and is that really what happened? Did I remember that correctly? But anyways, who cares? Um, So, I'll just talk about, how I came to Zen practice and kind of some of my experiences in terms of being involved in these communities and how I ended up here at Great Mountain. Um, talk a little bit about my past, just to the extent that it's relevant to my Zen practice, kind of directly. But I was from a very working class, kind of Mexican American background. I until I practiced Zen, I never knew anyone who had graduated from college. So I was, in hindsight now, I would say I was from an ethnic environment in a sense, um, American ethnic environment, just working class, and everybody I knew. My dad, he was in the Navy, and then he was a maintenance man at the hospital, Veterans Hospital, and my uncle was a carpenter, and everybody I knew was like a plumber, a carpenter, electrician, that kind of thing. Very, very much in that kind of vein. And my mom, she spent some time. She worked in like a shampoo factory on the bottling line. She was a licensed vocational nurse for a while. So I think you get the picture. I tell you a little bit later, Zen was like a culture shock for me in a lot of ways. And my parents divorced when I was 12, and my sister and my parents sort of, dropped out of the picture. My mom, I don't want to speak too poorly of her. She did some things she shouldn't have done and kind of disappeared from my life for a number of years. And by the time I was about 15, I was sort of lied about my age to get a job. I ended up working at Kmart as what they call a K-13, the guy that gets the carts. And I was renting rooms, sleeping on people's couches, trying to finish high school. And I ended up falling into a group of punk rock kids. And I was sort of into rock and roll. I played music and to the extent that I could. And I really got it absorbed into the punk rock culture. And I think that was kind of the first thing for me that opened my mind up. And I think it kind of almost laid the ground for kind of the Dharma, it was my, teenager. I think the idea of embracing who you were, embracing, the fact that I was working class, embracing my ethnicity, embracing the ugliness of my life, and just kind of, yeah, so what if I'm poor? Yeah, so what? So what? That also comes with a bad attitude that, was maybe hard to shake. Maybe I still got some of that. But it was my introduction to kind of leftist politics, feminism, kind of the spectrum of gender, sexual identity, feminism, veganism, animal rights, and you go to these punk rock shows, and there would be bands playing, but along the walls in the back, there were these guys. A lot of them were kind of old hippie counterculture types that, when Hunter S. Thompson's wave broke, they didn't go back to Wall Street. They got into punk rock, and they were, they had flyers for animal rights and anti-vivisection. And for a kid like me, it was just fantastic. I just loved it, and I embraced it. And I had a lot of friends, and ended up playing in bands and touring and recording, and enjoyed that quite a bit. When I So, that was kind of the first thing that I had ever encountered that was kind of countercultural, opened me up. When I got out of high school, I quit my job at Kmart and I got a job as a janitor in a apartment complex. And I was the guy that went in and had the thing you clean out the fish tank with. I had one of those because I cleaned the cigarette butts out of the ashtray by the jacuzzi. And I, had a Windex bottle, and I would clean off the the washers and dryers. And I was going to school at night. I wanted to go to college, so I went to, I was working as a janitor during the day and going to community college at night. And I wasn't academic at all, and I wasn't religious at all. I was a punk rock guy with a bad attitude, but kind of maybe thought I wanted to be an architect. I don't know why. I probably didn't even know what an architect was. I didn't know how to do math. It was probably something other than being a janitor, cleaning up an apartment complex. I think that's probably what it was. But so I was going to school at night, and I'm trying to knock out credits because I'm on my way. I want to transfer to a university, a big school, so I can really go to college and all this other stuff. And one of the classes that I had to take, well, I didn't have to take. It was electives, and I'm trying to knock out classes, right? So I'm trying to get out of there so I can get to the big time. And one of the classes was a world religions class. And, I had no interest in religion. I was anti-religion. I absolutely knew all religion was bullshit. I'd never read the Bible. I didn't need to read the Bible. I knew it was horseshit. So, I didn't believe in any of it. I thought religion or spirit, I didn't know what spirituality is. I still don't. But I thought it was just for weak people, weak-minded people who, I don't know, weren't into punk rock. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking, but I was absolutely certain I know that. And I took this class, just kind of going in, I'm just going to take this class and I'm going to just, get some credits. And the class was okay. The teacher was cool. I think he was like some sort of maybe a Presbyterian, like pastor or something like that. Pretty cool guy. I picked up on that, but I read this chapter on Buddhism, and it really resonated with me just out of the blue. I didn't expect it. I was like, wow, this is interesting stuff. I like this. This resonates with me. And I particularly liked what I was reading about Zen. And this is a college, textbook. And it, had the guy with the bowl, the oryoki bowl, the Japanese guy, black and white picture, and kind of suited my, I guess, whatever soft spot I had for this kind of thing. But I know specifically that it appealed to the egalitarian chip I had on my shoulder. I sort of felt that everyone was a jerk, and I was struggling to survive, and religious people were a bunch of phonies. Everyone's a phony, and I'm, Zen was like, it's egalitarian, it's not really religion. I was like, this sounds good. And then this idea of enlightenment, which I'd never heard about, it's like, I think I want that. That sounds like something that I'm interested in. I like the idea of, practicing meditation and waking up and, blowing this popsicle stand, sort of kind of my attitude, I think, at the time. And as part of the, as part of your final assignment in that class, you had a choice of things you could write a paper on. You could read a book and write a paper, or you could go to a Buddhist temple and write a paper about your experience there. And so I, went to this temple. It's a Silai temple in Hacienda Heights. It's a Mahayana Chinese temple. It's the largest Buddhist temple in the Western Hemisphere. And maybe some of you have visited it. It's a big, giant monastic complex in, Orange County, California, LA, California, of all places, situated on top of a hill. So I went there, and I met a monk, and he was telling me this story about how he's from China or Taiwan, wherever he's from. And he was telling me this story about how he was from a wealthy family, and he was going to marry this girl, and then on the eve of their marriage, she broke off the marriage, and he was inconsolable and became a monk. And I was fascinated by the story, and he gave me a copy of the Diamond Sutra. It was a Xeroxed copy with a stamp in it. It was just the Diamond Sutra in an English translation. And I took it back to my apartment, and it sat on the nightstand next to my bed. I don't know, for a couple weeks or a month, and I don't know. I was at home one day, and I don't know. I just laid on my bed. I think I'll lay on my bed and read this thing. And so I opened it up and I started reading it, and it was impenetrable to me for the most part. But the little tiny pieces that I did understand, I knew that it was true. It was something along the lines of language has no inherent meaning, not some grand, sort of insight or anything, but just kind of the, maybe now you might even call it kind of postmodernist thought, pre-modern, ancient postmodern thought. But it resonated with me, and it was the very first time that I ever remember thinking, if all the rest of this stuff I don't understand, but I think it's probably true. It's just that I don't understand it. That was a big difference, because anything prior to that time, and I think at this time I was probably 18 or 19. Prior to this time, any time that there was something I didn't understand, it was a bunch of nonsense and probably a lie. So, it was kind of the first thing that started to penetrate my armor a little bit. And this was maybe, I want to say 1988 or something like that. And, for people who were interested in Buddhism at that time and weren't living in a big city, coming across Buddhist books probably wasn't the easiest thing in the world. So I go to, public libraries, and I would go to, B. Dalton bookstore, and they had, one shelf of religious books, and there'd be the Hare Krishna Bhagavad Gita, there'd be 8 copies of the Bible. And then I came across a book called A Western Approach to Zen by an English author named Christmas Humphreys. And I read that, and I think in that book he mentions the 3 pillars of Zen. So then I went and on this search for this book called The 3 Pillars of Zen, and I found it. And there's more stuff on this Kensho thing, this enlightenment thing. And I was reading the book, and in the back of the book, they had instructions on how to do Zazen. And so I was teaching myself how to learning to do Zazen out of the book. Maybe that's the correct way to do that. Like a bazillion other Zen students. I think a lot of people, have done that. I would sit every day and teaching myself sort of how to do this, but it wasn't really working. And in the book, the one thing that's consistent in these Zen books I was reading is you have to have a teacher. You have to have a teacher. You have to have a teacher. Right around that time, I stumbled on a book called Everyday Zen by Joko Beck. And I read the book, I enjoyed the book, what I could understand of it. A lot of this stuff I didn't understand. I just had this idea of enlightenment or Kensho, whatever it was. The rest of the stuff was impenetrable. The stuff that more mature, thoughtful, more intelligent people would understand, that didn't get to me. The stuff about feeling your body or getting in touch with your feelings and, knowing who you are. I didn't get any of that stuff. It was like, I want that gold ring. That's what I'm looking for. So anyway, I read this book, and there was the number for the San Diego Zen Center in the back of the book. And I called the number, and very nice people. And I didn't know, what it was like. I didn't know anything about, what to expect. So I just called, and they were very nice. Hi, how are you? And they said, well, you're in Riverside. I'm from Riverside, Southern California, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's like the Pueblo of California, something like that. It's a small city, little rough around the edges, closer to LA than San Diego. So the person on the phone said, why don't you go to the Zen Center of Los Angeles? That's closer there, and Joko's teacher's there. Okay, I'd never heard of Maezumi Roshi. I didn't even know the Zen Center of Los Angeles existed. For all I know, the Zen Center of San Diego was the only Zen center in America. I knew about Rochester. So I'm just kind of figuring out what's going on in this world. So I go to the Zen Center of Los Angeles, and I go to the introduction, I signed up for the Introduction to Zen class, which is a kind of all-day Sunday class they had at the time, where They teach you how to do Zazen. They talk to you a little bit about the history of Buddhism and Zen. And you get an interview with a teacher who was Mizumi Roshi at the time. And I'll never forget walking into the Zendo there for the first time. This, and those of you who've been there will know this, the smell, there's a mix of incense and floor polish, you know, and this kind of, this air of clean energy. I don't know how to describe it. It was very, very impressed, you know, it was very impressive to me. And all the people were super cool and super nice. And you know, I, in my own sort of very shut down, very angry way, you know, I was sort of maybe being a little receptive on my own. These were very welcoming people. I was a little scared going there. It was the first time I'd ever really seen a zafu. You know, I'd been using pillows or blankets or whatever. So I got to use a zafu for the first time, and a zabuton, and it was great. You know, I was really, you know, sort of enthusiastic about it. And then it was time for the, you know, at some point everybody, and there was like 6 people in the class. And towards the end of the day, everyone gets to go meet Mizumi Roshi. And I thought, well, maybe he could have, I don't know. But I remember thinking, I better like be on my best behavior because this guy could probably read my mind, you know. You know, he's, you know, I'm going to go and he's going to say, get out of here, you know, you don't even belong here, you little punk. I know who you are. I saw what you were thinking or whatever. But I didn't run, you know, I went in there and, you know, and it was like, you know, he's sitting there and this Japanese guy, and it's a dark room. If you've ever been to the Dokusan room there's a statue of, you know, I don't think it's Manjushri, but there's some sort of image behind him and candles and pictures of other Japanese people. And he's got, you know, this, you know, stick in his hand, and he's this kind of skinny, kind of taut, you know, very present, you know, Japanese guy. He's probably, you know, actually he's probably not much older than I am now. He was probably in his late 50s or something like that, you know, at the time, and kind of stern looking. And he was the nicest guy in the world. You know, it's probably the first time in my life I was ever honest, actually. And I would just, you know, told him, you know, I'm here, I want to learn. And, you know, I read this book and that book, and, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm really open to learn. And I was talking, and he reached over and he started massaging my shoulders. And he said, yeah, just relax. He's all, just relax. You know, I'm glad you're here. And, you know, just keep coming, and you know, we'll see you next time you come here. And that was about it. But it was, you know, for me, you know, in my state of mind, it was like, you know, you might as well put me in a time machine and transported me to another place. You know, I walked out of there like, whoa, that was a life-altering event. I think, you know, maybe just the idea that I didn't run away and go, you know, forget these stupid people. I'm going to go back and hang out with my friends and drink beer, you know, and be safe. It was maybe one of the first times in my life where I made a decision consciously to kind of maybe step past, you know, my fear. And so I started going there. I would go, I became a member. And as part of the membership, you could go and you could stay the night and do Zazen. And I would go, you know, pretty frequently, and I would go stay the night and do Zazen in the morning and have Dokusan. And, you know, at that point, it was all, you know, counting my breath and just kind of forming a relationship with the community and getting to know Mizumi Roshi. And at that point, he said, well, have you been to Zen Mountain Center? So he said, that's even closer to you. And Zen Mountain Center is it's the kind of mountain retreat center for Zen Center of Los Angeles. So I went there, and I met Jitsudo. Some of you might know Jitsudo. He ended up being Jitsudo Roshi. Jitsudo was a monk, and he was the vice abbot there. And I met him, and he and I had a lot in common. Both of our families were from Silver City, New Mexico. Both of our families had migrated to Los Angeles. We were both raised in California. We were both sort of counterculture types. Jitsudo he was a hippie, you know, and I was a punk rocker. So we had a lot in common. And he was a very, very kind person, a very compassionate person. And, I think he saw that I was curious. I think he also saw that I was rough around the edges. And he would invite me up to work, and I'd go up and work on the weekends. Um, and at some point he said, we're doing this thing called Ongo. And he explained to me what Ongo was. And he said, why don't you come here and do Ongo? And so I went and I did Ongo with them, which is the 3-month traditional retreat. And after that, he came up to me and he was like, the longer you stay here, the harder it is for them to tell you to leave. And so I ended up living there, But at that time, I was having a hard time giving up my life, and I was young, and I was not necessarily like Thomas Merton, ready to become like a Trappist monk or something. I had one foot in and one foot out at that point. And Jitsudo, I remember when I left after that, he tried to get me to stay, probably wanting me to continue practicing, probably thinking, oh, that dummy's, we're never going to see him again. But I remember him, kind of confronting me in the parking lot before I left. And he was like, don't leave, just stay here. Why don't you just stay here? I was like, no, I got to go, and blah, 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 blah. So I took off. About 6 months later, I heard that he had gotten Dharma transmission. So I came back, and I went to go see him on, like, they have a Sunday program. They never had one. I don't know what they do now. And he was there, but he wasn't in his robes. And I said, I came here, I want to be your student. He's all, well, I've been disrobed. he had sex with one of his students there, and she was quite a bit younger than he was. And I knew her, he said, I had sex with so-and-so. I was like, oh, okay, well, I still want to be your student. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm moving. I just got a job. My wife's divorcing me. I lost my house. I just got a job working on rebuilding condominiums that had been destroyed in the Northridge earthquake of the 90s. He's like, you want to go work with me? I was like, yeah. So I quit my job. I went home, I quit my job. I bought I used what money I had, and I bought a skill saw. And I went to LA with Jitsudo to go live with a bunch of Zen pirates in this condo. There was a bunch of us, we had like a little Zendo in this condominium complex that had been damaged. Kind of wealthy people, in their condos. And Jitsudo worked as framer. I did windows and doors. A guy who's now a Shinko Roshi, who's in New Zealand, he was a laborer. There was a bunch of us there, living in this condo. And Jitsudo, he was disrobed at the time, but he would still give doksan. He would wear his rakusu, and he would just wear sweats and a t-shirt. And we would get up and do Zazen together every day. And then we go out and work, and we come back and we do Zazen again. And we live like that, I guess it was a year and a half, and so other students came and went, but because I was just a student, I stayed there. And at the time I think I'm running way over time. I'm really sorry. Anyways, at the time, Meizumi Roshi died, and Jitsudo said, hey, I'm going to Albuquerque. You want to go with me? And I said, yeah. And so he and I got in his truck, and we went out, and one of his other students had bought him a farmhouse, and we turned it into a Zen center, and I lived there for 7 years. It was the Hidden Mountain Zen Center. And Jitsudo kind of did the same thing. And, Lisa and I ended up leaving. And after I left, I studied with Mitra Roshi for a while, but I kind of drifted out of practice. I went back to school, and anyway, about 2013, I started to really feel the effects of whatever samadhi I developed was starting to dissipate in a serious way. And I kind of started forcing myself to do Zazen. And I did that, Lisa and I, for about 2 years. And I remember I had several encounters with Shishin Roshi at Zen Center of Los Angeles and Zen Mountain Center and at Naropa. Lisa and I had visited in there. So we came up to visit the community, and I was really impressed. And, I just kind of felt like I was back at home. Lisa said this last week. Working with Shishin Roshi and Roshi Shinko, they were the ones who introduced me to my body. they were the ones who introduced me to, kind of helping to disintegrate this armor that I've had, and I read The Great Hard Way and absorbed it, like a sponge. And it's been, this Sangha has been wonderful, and it just feels like a family to me. And um, I feel like I'm sort of here to stay. And I have an affinity for white plum practice. Anyway, I think that the white plum lineage is the lineage that I sort of was trained in, if you want to call it that. And, I spent all these years, smelling the incense and chanting the sutras in a certain way and bowing at a certain time and hearing the bells and the hon at a certain time. It's sort of, it's like coming home for Christmas or something like that. Um, I just will say that, studying with the Roshi, well, not just the Roshis, the Dharma holders, the Dharma heirs in this lineage, Gyoto, and I'll include him because he was the first person that I really met, all of them. All the teachers in this Sangha have been wonderful. I'm really looking forward to Yugen getting Dharma transmission, because I got a lot out of Doksan or Daisan or with him, and I'm looking forward to to having that opportunity again. So I can't say enough about it. I think you all probably share my enthusiasm. But that's all. I did give it sort of short shrift. I was a little too wrapped up in my story, but nothing new about that. So yeah, we'll just go to questions.